The night was silent except for the soft crackle of burning metal, a twisted wreckage that still smoked under the dim light of a broken moon. The air smelled of ash and melted steel, the remains of something that had fallen from the sky. Middle of that destruction, a young woman lay still, her body covered in cuts, bruises, and the dust of shattered earth. When she opened her eyes, the world was blurry, her ears ringing as if 1,000 explosions had gone off inside her skull. She sat up slowly, her head pounding, but what struck her most was not the pain, it was the emptiness. She could not remember her name. She could not remember who she was or why she was here. Her past had been stolen in the crash, leaving her with nothing but silence and confusion. The only thing she knew was that she was alive. As she stumbled from the wreckage, her legs weak and her mind spinning, she heard something that froze her heart. A low growl. She turned, expecting danger. But what came out from behind a broken piece of metal were dogs, 3 of them, their fur covered in dust, their eyes glowing with the sharpness of survivors. For a moment, she thought they would attack, but instead they circled her, sniffing the air, cautious, but not violent. One of them, the largest with a scar across its muzzle, came close and pressed its nose against her hand. She trembled, her body ready to pull away, but something deep inside told her to stay still. The dog licked her palm, and the other 2 wagged their tails. In that broken moment, surrounded by death and fire, she was not alone. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of survival. The woman, nameless and lost, learned quickly that without the dogs, she would not last. They guided her to water when her throat burned like sand. They hunted small creatures in the barren land, dragging them back to her when hunger made her weak. At night, when the wind cut through her torn clothes, the dogs curled around her, their warmth shielding her from the cold. She did not understand why they had chosen her, why they had not left to survive on their own. But the bond was clear. Whatever past she had lost, these animals had become her family. In their eyes she saw loyalty, and in their presence she felt something she had not felt since opening her eyes in the wreckage: safety. Still, questions haunted her like shadows. Who was she? Why had she been in the wreck at all? Every night when she closed her eyes, flashes returned bright lights. Fire screams echoing in a tunnel, and a feeling of running. Sometimes she woke up shaking, gasping for air as if she had drowned in memories too heavy to bear. The dogs would press against her, calming her with silent comfort, but the fear never left. Deep down she knew she was not just a survivor of an accident. Something more had happened, something hidden, something terrible one morning. As the sun rose weakly through the smoke-filled sky, she searched the wreck again, driven by an unshakable need for answers. The dogs followed her closely, their paws crunching on the blackened ground. She pushed aside pieces of torn metal and broken wires, her hands bleeding, until she found something wedged beneath a fallen beam. It was small, covered in dirt and ash, but when she wiped it clean, her heart raced. A device shaped like a smooth stone but glowing faintly blue. The moment she touched it, a spark of memory rushed through her mind, so sharp that it forced her to her knees. She saw herself wearing something like a uniform, standing in front of a large glass wall. On the other side of the glass, figures watched her, their faces blurred, their voices muffled. She felt fear, anger, and then darkness. Her hand shook as she held the device close. The dogs growled, sensing her fear, their eyes darting across the empty land, as if expecting danger to arrive with this strange discovery. She clutched the object to her chest, her breath uneven, her body trembling from the force of the memory. She did not know what the device was. One thing was clear: it was connected to her lost past. And perhaps to the reason she had survived when everything else around her had been destroyed. That night, the wind was colder than usual. The dogs pressed tightly against her as she lay awake, staring at the stars. She wondered if anyone out there was searching for her. She wondered if she had once belonged to a family, or an army, or something much darker. The flashes of the glass room haunted her, and she could not shake the thought that she had not been just a passenger in that crash. The silence of the dead land pressed on her ears, broken only by the soft breaths of the dogs at her side. She whispered into the night, as if the stars themselves might hear her. "Who am I?" The dogs stirred, their ears twitching, and the largest lifted its head to growl low at the horizon. The woman sat up, heart racing, and followed their gaze. Out there, beyond the broken wreck, something moved in the shadows. It was far, but it was real. She gripped the glowing device in her hands and felt the chill of fear rush through her veins. She was not alone on this dead land. Someone or something was watching. The morning light came weak and gray, barely piercing through the thick layer of smoke and dust that hung in the air. The woman awoke with the dogs pressed tightly against her, their bodies tense, their ears twitching at every sound. She had not slept well, not after the strange feeling of being watched the night before. Her mind replayed it again, and again the movement in the distance, the shadow on the horizon. She tried to convince herself it had been nothing but her imagination, or maybe some wild creature wandering across the dead land. But the dogs had sensed it too. Their instincts were sharper than hers, and they had growled at the dark like soldiers. Facing an enemy, that truth left her unsettled. Something or someone was out there. She rose slowly, her muscles aching from nights of sleeping on cold ground. The glowing device she had found in the wreck still sat safely tucked beneath her. Torn jacket, close to her skin. Every time she touched it, warmth spread through her hand, and memories threatened to return, flashing so quickly she could not hold them. Dogs watched as she pulled herself to her feet, their tails low, their bodies restless. Small nod, as if speaking to them, her voice rough and uncertain. "We can't stay here." The wilderness stretched endless around them, silent and unfriendly. The ground was cracked and dry, the air heavy with the stench of burnt earth. Yet the woman noticed signs as she began to walk away from the wreckage. Strange marks on the soil, footprints too large for a human pressed deep into the dust. The dogs sniffed the tracks, hackles raised and growled low in their throats. She knelt beside one, her hands shaking as she traced the outline. Not a shape she recognized. Not animal, not human. Something else. Something alien. Fear spread through her chest, but with it came determination. Whatever was out there had either seen the crash or had been watching long before. She felt the weight of the device hidden under her jacket, and a thought struck her like a blade. Maybe they were here because of her. Maybe they were here for her. Hours passed as she wandered farther from the wreck. The dogs moved beside her in perfect silence, alert and protective, scanning the horizon for danger. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she pressed forward, her mind haunted by flashes of memory. Again and again, she saw herself in that glass. Room voices speaking from behind the walls, words she could not hear. She remembered her own voice raised in anger, her fists against the glass, and always the same ending. Darkness, like a curtain falling. She could not remember her name, but she could feel something buried within her, something important, something the shadows of this land did not want her to discover by midday. She reached a ridge of broken stone and climbed to the top for a better view. Her breath caught the moment she looked down. There, in the valley below, stood a structure half buried in the earth. It was not natural. Its surface gleamed faintly beneath the layers of dust, a smooth silver that reflected the dull light of the sun. It was shaped like no building she had ever known, curved and sharp all at once, like a blade rising from the ground. The dogs barked uneasily, their bodies pressed close against her legs. She crouched, staring at the strange ruin, her heart racing faster with every second. Whoever had built it was not human. Something told her she had seen this before. Flashes of memory came harder, now bright lights, that same silver material, symbols carved across walls, voices speaking in languages that were not human. She pressed her hands to her head, pain slicing through her skull. The dogs whined softly, nuzzling her, trying to pull her back from the storm inside her mind. When the pain passed, she realized she was trembling. She stared down at the strange ruin and whispered, "I know this place." Her voice cracked as she said it, though she did not understand why. The dogs barked again, louder this time, and she turned sharply. Across the valley, movement flickered. Shadows darted between rocks, quick and deliberate. Not beasts, not wild animals. They were too precise. She felt her throat tighten. She was being watched again. This time there was no mistaking it. She ducked low behind the ridge, clutching the glowing device. It pulsed faintly in her hand, almost alive, and she realized something terrifying. Whoever was down there, whoever was hiding in the valley, could probably sense it too. Her dogs pressed against her, ready to defend, their eyes fixed on the moving shapes below. For a moment she thought of running, of leaving the ruin behind and fleeing into the wilderness. But another voice inside her whispered, "This is the truth. This is what you've been running from." She swallowed hard, her body trembling with both fear and courage. If she wanted to understand who she was, she wanted to know why she had survived the wreck when everything else had been destroyed, she would have to face what waited below. The ruin was calling her, and so were the shadows. As the sun sank low and the first chill of night began to creep across the dead land, she rose to her feet. With the dogs at her side, she started down the ridge, step by step toward the silver. Ruin and the unseen eyes watching her every move. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but she did not stop. She could not. The past she had lost was waiting in the valley, and so was the danger that might destroy her future. The night wrapped itself around the valley like a shroud, heavy and suffocating, with only a thin slice of moonlight bleeding through the ash-stained sky. The woman stood at the base of the ridge, the ruins looming before her like the bones of some ancient giant. Her dogs paced restlessly around her, their nails scraping the hard ground, their eyes fixed on the strange structure as if they sensed something unnatural inside. She tightened her grip on the glowing device hidden in her jacket. It pulsed steadily against her chest, and with every beat she felt it pulling her forward. Urging her closer to the ruin, she stepped carefully across the cracked earth, each footfall echoing far too loud in the stillness. The ruin rose higher as she neared, its surface strangely smooth, untouched by time or decay. No human hand could have built this. She could feel that truth in her bones, and yet, deep in her mind, buried behind the fog of her broken memory, something whispered, "You've been here before." Her fingers trembled as she pressed them against the cool metal wall. It hummed beneath her touch, alive, aware. The dogs whimpered, one of them tugging gently at her torn sleeve as if to pull her back, but she did not move. She closed her eyes and images rushed into her head, a room filled with blinding light, symbols glowing across a surface just like this one. Voices speaking in tones she could not understand, but somehow recognized. A sharp pain stabbed behind, her eyes forcing her back. She gasped, stumbling, her hands shaking violently. Suddenly a sound broke the silence, low, rhythmic, mechanical. She spun around, her heart pounding, and saw them. Figures emerging from the shadows of the rocks, their bodies tall and thin, their movements deliberate. They weren't human. Even in the half-light, she could see the gleam of their pale skin, stretched tight over long limbs, and their eyes, wide, unblinking, reflecting the faint glow of the ruin. The dogs barked fiercely, their growls tearing through the night, but the figures didn't flinch. They were coming closer. Fear coiled inside her, but she forced herself to stand tall. Something inside told her that running would change nothing. These beings were not here by chance. They had been waiting for her. And the ruin itself seemed to awaken at their presence, silver surface flickering with faint lines of light that spread outward like veins. The device under her jacket grew hot against her skin, and she realized with a jolt of horror the ruin was reacting to her. The figure stopped only a few feet away. For a long, unbearable moment, silence ruled. The dogs bristled, ready to strike, their growls echoing like thunder. Then one of the figures raised a hand, slow and deliberate, as though trying not to alarm her. When it spoke, the sound was strange layered, broken, almost like multiple voices speaking at once. Yet in her mind, she understood. The words formed clearly inside her head. "You carry the key. It belongs here." She froze, unable to breathe. The device, they meant the device. Her chest tightened as she realized these beings weren't strangers. They knew what she carried, and maybe, just maybe, They knew who she was. She tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat, trembling like leaves in the wind. Finally, her voice broke free, soft but sharp with desperation. "What do you mean? What is this place? Who am I?" The being tilted its head, its glowing eyes studying her closely. Then, in that strange layered voice, it replied, "You were one of us once, till they took you." Her heart slammed against her ribs, and her knees nearly buckled. One of them? The words twisted inside her. A storm of confusion and denial. She shook her head violently, clutching the device tighter, her dogs pressing against her legs protectively. "No," she whispered. "That can't be true. I'm human." The figure stepped closer, and the ruin came alive. Lights flared across its surface, symbols etching themselves in radiant lines, glowing brighter as the device in her hand pulsed faster, syncing with the ruin itself.
"Oh, yes."
She staggered back, fear and awe colliding inside her. The ground beneath her feet trembled, and for a split second, she felt as though the ruin was breathing. Her dogs barked wildly, pulling her away, but she could not move. She was locked in place, her eyes fixed on the glowing walls, her heart trapped between terror and recognition. Deep in her broken memory, something stirred an image of herself, standing in a room of silver light surrounded by these same beings. Her hands raised as the ruins sang with energy. A voice echoed from that memory, her own voice, filled with fire. "If I forget, remind me. If I fall, bring me back." Her breath caught. Was this what she had been running from? Was this ruin not just a building, but a truth buried deep in her blood? Before she could ask another question, the figure closest to her stepped forward, its glowing eyes fixed on hers. Its voice pierced her mind like a blade. "You are the last. They will come for you soon." The words left her trembling. Were they? Why was she the last? She wanted answers, but before she could speak, the ruin roared to life, a beam of white light shooting skyward. Cutting through the night, the earth shook violently, dust and stone raining down around her. Dogs barked madly, circling her as if to shield her from whatever was coming. The figures did not move, their glowing eyes locked on the light. She felt the device burning in her hand, its glow merging with the ruin's power. For the first time, she realized the terrifying truth. This was not just a ruin, it was a signal, and now something knew exactly where she was. The ground would not stop trembling. Dust rained from the jagged cliffs, the dogs pressed against her legs, and the ruin's light carved a scar across the dark sky. She stood frozen in its glow, her hand clenched so tightly around the pulsing device that her knuckles turned white. The alien figures around her did not flinch, did not run, did not even seem alarmed. They only stared upward, their unblinking eyes catching the reflection of the beam. For a few heartbeats there was only silence. Then the night answered. A low, unnatural hum rippled through the valley, the kind of sound that seemed to crawl under her skin and rattle her bones. It wasn't the ruin, it was coming from above. The woman tilted her head, her breath catching, and saw shadows streaking across the stars. Not meteors, not human craft. Something else. Something that had been waiting for this signal. The tallest of the alien figures finally moved, stepping toward her. Its layered voice cracked through her mind with sharp urgency. The signal has awakened them. You cannot run. You cannot hide. Her chest heaved as panic clawed at her. Awakened who? Who's coming? She wanted answers, needed them, but the alien's eyes only burned brighter. It raised a hand, pointing directly at her chest, where the device glowed like fire against her jacket. They will come for the key, and they will kill to take it. Her throat went dry. She looked at the ruin, its walls alive with flowing patterns of light that twisted and pulsed like veins of fire. The dogs snarled at the sky, their instincts telling them danger was near. And she felt it too, something descending fast. Then the memories hit her, flashes of fire and screaming. The crash. The shadows leaning over her, taking something from her body, stealing her voice as she cried out in a language she no longer remembered. She staggered backward, clutching her head as the pain nearly split her skull in two. Her knees buckled and she fell to the ground. One of the dogs pressed its muzzle to her cheek, whining, grounding her in the present. The memories would not stop. She saw herself standing inside a chamber of silver light, her hands pressed to a surface that looked exactly like this ruin. Behind her, others beings like the ones surrounding her now watched in silence as she chanted words that seemed to shake the very air. And then soldiers. Human soldiers. No, they wore armor she didn't recognize, their weapons glowing. As they stormed the chamber, she remembered the fear, the shouting, the moment her world went black. Her eyes flew open, her chest rising and falling in rapid gasps. She looked at the figures, her voice breaking. I was there. I saw it. They took me. The tallest alien stepped closer, its face unreadable. Its voice resonated cold and heavy. Yes, they erased you. They made you forget, but the ruin remembers. The key remembers. Now, so do you. Before she could respond, the sky tore open. A massive ship descended, black and sharp-edged, blotting out the stars as it cast a shadow across the valley. Her. Dogs barked frantically, their growls lost in the deafening hum of its engines. Lights pierced the ground, sweeping across the ruin until they locked on her. She felt the beam burn against her skin, as if it knew exactly who she was, the aliens. Surrounding her raised their hands, their bodies glowing faintly, as if preparing for battle. But she felt something worse: recognition. The sight of that ship sent a wave of dread through her. Deep inside, her buried memory whispered a single truth. She had seen that ship before, and whoever commanded it had been hunting her ever since. Pulse hammered in her ears. The device in her hand burned brighter, syncing with the ruin's patterns as though trying to protect itself or warn her. She wanted to run, but the alien figures blocked her path. Not with hostility, but with finality. They turned their heads toward the sky, and one of them spoke in that strange layered tone. The hunters have come. The war you forgot is not over. The ship's engine screamed as hatches opened along its belly. Dark forms began to fall, armored soldiers descending on beams of light. The ruin's glow flared in answer, shaking the valley as if it knew the fight was only beginning. The woman staggered to her feet, the dog circling her protectively, and for the first time since the accident she felt no doubt. She wasn't just a survivor. She was something more, something tied to this ruin, this key, and the truth that had been stolen from her. The soldiers were coming, the ruin was awake. The future she had tried to escape was crashing down on her again. The night burned alive with fire and metal. The massive ship hovering above the valley unleashed its soldiers like a storm. They fell in lines of light, armored shadows that struck the ground with earth-shaking force. The woman's dogs lunged forward, growling and snapping, but she pulled them back. She could feel the heat rolling off the soldiers' armor, see the gleam of their weapons. These were not men, not entirely. Their movements were too exact, their eyes glowing faintly through their helmets. Their steps making no sound even as they landed heavily on the rock. The alien figures surrounding her reacted instantly. With a single gesture, light flared from their hands, forming barriers that rippled like water in the air. Bolts of energy shot down from the soldiers' rifles, smashing into the shields and scattering sparks that illuminated the valley. The woman stumbled back, her hand clutching the strange device as though it were her only lifeline. It pulsed against her palm, glowing brighter with every impact, almost alive, almost aware. Her heart hammered as one of the armored soldiers turned its gaze directly on her. The glow in its helmet flared, and with unnatural speed it broke from the formation, charging straight toward her. Her dogs barked, leaping in front, but she froze, caught between running and standing her ground. The soldier raised a blade, its edge humming with deadly energy. Then the ruin answered. The ground cracked, light bursting upward in jagged streaks that cut across the battlefield. The soldier halted, jerking back as a column of glowing stone rose between them. Symbols etched themselves into the air, burning with the same fire as the device in her hand. Her breath caught. The ruin wasn't just reacting, it was protecting her. The tall alien at her side glanced at her, its layered voice booming over the chaos. The key has chosen. Do not fear. But she did fear. Fear gripped every part of her as more soldiers advanced, their weapons slamming against the shields of the aliens who fought to hold the line. The dogs barked wildly, the ruin roared with light, and she felt something inside her shift, like a lock turning. Memory surged back, stronger than before. She saw herself on another world, standing among these same alien figures. They were her allies. She wasn't their enemy. She had fought beside them. The device had not been given to her by accident. She had taken it willingly, swearing to guard it, to keep it from those who would twist its power. Her knees weakened as the memory rushed through her, but the voice of the tall alien cut through the fog in her head. You must awaken it. Only you can. The hunters will never stop until you do. She clutched the device tighter, her fingers trembling. The ruin pulsed brighter in response, the patterns in its walls shifting rapidly as if waiting for her command. But she didn't know what to do. She didn't even know who she was anymore. The first soldier broke through the shields, its blade slicing one of the alien defenders to the ground in a spray of light. The others pressed forward, their rifles blazing. The woman stumbled back, clutching the device to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. Her dogs pressed against her legs, refusing to leave her side. Then she heard a voice, not from the aliens. Not from the soldiers, but from deep inside her own head. A whisper, calm and steady. Speak the word. You remember. Her lips parted. She didn't know what she would say, but her mouth moved on its own. A single word spilled out, a word that burned with familiarity, one she had once sworn never to forget. The ruin responded instantly. Light exploded across the valley, a wave of pure energy blasting outward from the ancient stone. The soldiers screamed as the force hurled them back, their weapons shorting out, their armor cracking under the strain. The ship above shuddered, its engines flickering, as though the ruin's power reached all the way into the sky. The aliens stood tall, their shields fading as they turned to look at her. Their unreadable faces softened with something that almost resembled reverence. The tall one stepped closer, its voice resonating with finality. It is awakened. The war begins again with you. The woman collapsed to her knees, her dogs circling her protectively, the device blazing in her hands like a miniature sun. She was no longer just a survivor of an accident. She was the keeper of something that could change everything. And now, with the hunters descending in greater numbers, she realized the terrible truth. They had found her once. It would not stop until they claimed the key. The ruin had awakened, but so had the war. The night sky was no longer black, it burned with fire from the ships above. Beams of light tore across the valley, shaking the ruins to their foundations. The woman stood in the center of the chaos, the device glowing so fiercely it lit her face like a lantern. Her dogs barked at the sky, their growls drowned out by the roar of engines and the screams of metal soldiers landing all around them. The aliens who had fought by her side were fewer now. Many had fallen, their shimmering shields broken, their bodies flickering out like dying stars. Only a handful remained, surrounding her in a protective circle, their voices rising in a language she somehow half understood now. They weren't just defending her, they were calling upon her, pleading with her. She was no longer a stranger to them. She was the center of this battle, the leader, the tall alien with the layered voice, stepped close enough that she could feel the weight of its presence, its glowing eyes fixed on the device in her hands. You must decide, it said. The key cannot remain silent. If you wield it, the hunters will fall. But if you unleash its full power... It paused, the words heavy. You will never return to who you were. Her breath caught. She didn't know who she was before the accident, but she knew who she had become, a survivor with nothing but her dogs. Now, the device pulsed as though it could hear her thoughts, as if it were alive. In its rhythm, she felt possibility and destruction, hope and ending, all tangled together. The soldiers advanced. Dozens, maybe hundreds, pouring into the ruins. Weapons raised. The skyship above descended lower, its massive guns targeting the valley. The aliens raised their shields one last time, but their voices carried resignation. They couldn't hold for long. Her dogs pressed against her legs, looking to her for guidance. She could almost feel their hearts racing in sync with her own. For a fleeting moment, she remembered the simple nights she had lived after the accident fires. In the dark, the dogs curled against her side, the world silent and empty, but safe. She had thought that was her life forever. But fate had dragged her here, into the center of a war she hadn't asked for. The device pulsed faster, brighter. She felt it pulling at her, showing flashes of what could come. The soldiers obliterated. The ships falling from the sky, her name carried in whispers across worlds. Power that could protect her. Power that could destroy everything. She raised it. The soldiers halted, almost as if they sensed what was coming. The leader of the aliens lifted its head, its voice cutting through the storm. The choice is yours. Only yourself, or save us all. Her heart slammed against her ribs. For a moment she hesitated, torn between fear and resolve. Then she whispered a word, the same word that had awakened the ruin before. The valley erupted. Light tore through the ground, racing outward in waves of impossible energy. The soldiers disintegrated in the blast, their weapons and armor shredding. Like dust in a storm, skyship above groaned as its engines flared, then split apart, raining debris that burned like meteors across the wasteland. The ruins shone so brightly that for an instant the dead planet seemed alive again, bathed in light instead of shadow. When the glow faded, silence fell. The battlefield was gone. Only ashes remained where the soldiers had stood. Pulsed faintly, but the great fire was dimming. Returning to sleep, the woman stood trembling, the device in her hands scorched and lifeless. Her dogs whined softly, pressing against her legs. Around her, the surviving aliens knelt not in defeat, but in reverence. The tall one rose slowly, its voice quiet now. You have chosen. The hunters will fear you. The stars will remember you. But your life will never be your own again. She wanted to deny it, to throw the device away, to demand her old world back, the simple life of silence and survival. But deep down, she knew the truth. The accident hadn't stolen her past. It had only hidden it. She had been chosen long. Before she ever woke among the wreckage, her gaze lifted to the broken sky. Smoke curling from the shattered remains of the ship. She didn't feel victorious. She felt the weight of something larger pressing on her chest, or stretching beyond this world. Enemies far stronger than what she had just faced. Her dogs leaned against her, warm and steady, reminding her she wasn't alone. The aliens watched her with silent expectation. She closed her eyes, inhaling the ruined air, and whispered the only truth she could hold on to. Then let it begin. And in that moment, with the ruins still humming beneath her feet, she understood. The accident hadn't ended her life. It had only carried her to the place where her real story began.